Without Drew Holiday, are the Celtics now a house of cards? Game 3 was not just a loss, it was a warning shot. The Boston Celtics stumbled into Orlando for Game 3, expected to impose their will against a 41-win Magic squad, missing their defensive heartbeat, Jalen Suggs. Instead, Boston left bruised, humbled, and carrying far more questions than answers. The final score read 95-93, but the real damage was deeper. Because while Orlando grapples with Suggs' absence, Boston is now confronting something far more destabilizing: life without Drew Holiday. And if Friday's debacle was any indication, the Celtics might not be built to survive without him. Holiday's strained right hamstring will sideline him again for Game 4, and while casual observers might scoff, after all, Holiday was averaging a modest 10 points per game in the series. The box score completely masks his true value. Drew Holiday isn't just a point guard, he is the Celtics' stabilizer, the adult in the room when the chaos hits, the man who controls tempo, neutralizes opposing guards, and plugs defensive leaks before they become fatal. Without him, Boston's offense looked jittery, their defense sprung leaks, their composure cracked at the worst possible moments. And now, the Celtics are dangerously close to looking vulnerable in a series they were supposed to dominate. At Saturday's shoot-around, Al Horford, the veteran voice Boston often leans on in crisis, tried to project calm. "Different guys, we all need to step up. Drew does so much for us," he said. But even Horford's words felt more like a plea than a rallying cry. Because here's the ugly reality: without Holiday, Boston's structural integrity is severely compromised. His absence forced Horford into the starting lineup, sending Jason, Tatum, and Jaylen Brown down a position each. That positional domino effect has drained Boston's flexibility, strained their rotations, and created defensive mismatches that Orlando, to their credit, has ruthlessly exploited. In a playoff setting where physicality reigns and the referees often let them play, missing a defensive anchor like Holiday is not just inconvenient, it's lethal, and the timing could not be worse. Jaylen Brown, Boston's co-star and primary secondary creator, is now listed as questionable, battling a nagging knee injury that clearly isn't improving. Brown needed a knee injection just to be available for the postseason. Now, without Holiday, the burden on him and Tatum increases exponentially. But ask yourself, is a hobbled Jaylen Brown capable of handling extra ball handling duties under playoff pressure against a team throwing constant double teams and hand checks? What happens when Derek White is forced to not only score, but also orchestrate the offense? Who exactly is going to absorb Drew's 5.5 assists per game, his leadership, his off-ball brilliance, and his game-saving steals? If the Celtics falter, it won't be because Orlando is better. It will be because Boston's margins, so thin at the highest level, have finally been exposed. And here's the real nightmare scenario. Even if Boston survives Orlando, how sustainable is this? For months, the Boston Celtics have been painted as an unstoppable machine, the most lethal three-point shooting team ever assembled, the squad that shattered records, buried opponents under an avalanche of triples, and seemed to glide effortlessly toward another finals appearance. But what if the Magic just revealed the cracks in the armor? In Game 3, Orlando didn't just beat Boston 95-93. They exposed something far more dangerous, a method to dismantle the Celtics' most devastating weapon. And the scariest part? Boston had no answer. Throughout the regular season, Boston's entire identity was built around pace, spacing, and raining threes at historic volume. No team dared challenge them at the perimeter for fear of getting torched. Yet in the searing pressure of playoff basketball, Orlando dared. They bullied. They suffocated. They disrupted passing lanes, harassed cutters, and forced Boston into an unrecognizable version of itself. Think about it. For the first time all season, Boston failed to even attempt 33s in a game. A team that averaged nearly 50 attempts a night held to just 27. That's not just a bad night. That's structural failure. They're denying off-ball, admitted Peyton Pritchard at shoot-around, his voice betraying the tension. They're forcing us into one-on-one isolations, taking away catch-and-shoot looks. Translation: Boston was dragged into an ugly, grinding style of play where their biggest advantage, movement, spacing, quick decision-making, was neutralized. Meanwhile, Orlando's physicality didn't just impact the perimeter, it poisoned everything. Wendell Carter Jr. turned Kristaps Porzingis into a non-factor inside, muscling the 7'2" sniper out of his comfort zone. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, instead of gliding to the rim, found themselves hacked and swarmed, coughing up a staggering 13 turnovers between them. When the Celtics couldn't shoot and couldn't drive, what exactly were they supposed to do? Here's a brutal stat. Outside the paint, Boston shot an abysmal 16 for 53. That isn't just cold shooting, that's a blueprint for collapse. And sure, Al Horford tried to sound optimistic post-game. We need to keep executing, get to our spots, take advantage when we get open looks, he said calmly. But here's the uncomfortable truth. What happens when those open looks simply aren't there anymore? What the Magic have introduced is a terrifying possibility, that the Celtics' historic offense is fragile when confronted by relentless, handsy, borderline ugly playoff defense. A style of play the NBA quietly allows when it suits the narrative of a gritty underdog story. Think about the implications. If Orlando, a younger, less experienced team, can dictate terms against the mighty Celtics, what happens deeper, in the playoffs against bigger, nastier teams? What if New York, Milwaukee, or even Denver studies this tape and sharpens it into a weapon? Did the NBA just admit they failed the Celtics without actually saying it? Game 3 of the Celtics-Magic series ended in a brutal 95-93 defeat for Boston. But the real story wasn't the final score, it was the chaos boiling under the surface. If you thought the officiating looked suspicious live, you weren't imagining things. The NBA's last 2 minutes report has now officially confirmed a missed foul against the Celtics. But the bigger question is, how much are they still trying to cover up? Sure, the NBA pointed out one missed call, like tossing a bone to a starving dog. But the foul they acknowledged? It wasn't even among the moments that truly swung the game. It feels almost calculated, as if they chose the least damaging mistake to highlight, hoping to bury the real controversy without setting the entire basketball world on fire. Because let's be clear, the decisions that actually mattered, like the refs incorrectly ruling the ball off Derek White with under a minute to play, or refusing to correct the clock error that left Boston scrambling with 0.3 seconds, were conveniently ignored. Ask yourself, how often does a major clock management error get casually brushed aside in a playoff game? How often does possession get ripped away based on a bad angle and no correction? The truth is painful. The NBA wants the illusion of accountability without admitting that critical officiating failures change the outcome of a playoff game. They know it. We know it. But instead of facing it, they hand out sanitized reports that avoid the heart of the matter. And this is not just about Boston versus Orlando. This is a systemic rot. A league that preaches transparency yet hides behind technicalities when it matters most. How much faith can players and fans truly have in a system that only acknowledges mistakes that wouldn't shift a series? Meanwhile, Orlando's hyper-physical style of play has been given free rein. Yes, a flagrant foul has been called on the Celtics-Magic in each game, a move the league likely sees as proof they're keeping things under control. But let's not kid ourselves. These token calls feel more like strategic optics than real game management. The tone was set early. Play rough, push limits, and the referees will maybe whistle a flagrant once per night to save face. The psychological impact on Boston cannot be overstated. It's not just about bruises and fatigue. It's about second-guessing every drive, every contest, every late-game possession. You saw it in the disastrous third quarter when the Celtics mustered just 11 points. Not because they forgot how to play, but because physicality without regulation breaks rhythm, shatters confidence, and weaponizes doubt. And here's a spicier thought nobody wants to say out loud. What if the NBA actually benefits from the Celtics struggling? A longer series brings higher ratings, more drama, more revenue. Imagine the optics of a scrappy underdog like Orlando dragging a championship favorite to the brink. It's marketing gold. Of course, suggesting favoritism or manipulation sounds conspiratorial, until you realize that the NBA has a long, uncomfortable history with controversial officiating. Tim Donaghy, anyone? So while Celtics fans might find shallow comfort in the NBA admitting some mistake, the larger reality is darker. The last 2 minutes report doesn't fix anything. It doesn't change the series. It doesn't repair the trust eroded every time. Clear, obvious errors get memory hold, and make no mistake, unless Boston adapts and fights through this uneven battlefield, this series could spiral. Injuries are piling up, mental wear is setting in. The referees have signaled that physicality will rule unless the Celtics find a way to flip the script. The question now is simple but terrifying. Can Boston survive not just the Magic, but also the invisible pressure tilting the board against them?